Hello comrades, Commissar Bro here today with Warhammer 40,000 Inquisitor Martyr by Neocore Games. That's right, this is actually a, as you can see, alpha build. What is it, April 27th? So about a month before the game actually comes out. So, what can we say about this game? Well, it's a hell of a lot of fun. The best way to describe it is Diablo with Warhammer 40K. Seriously, that's exactly what this is. Now, I want to go ahead and apologize if I look like total trash playing this, but my mic's broken, and I'm unfortunately having to play one-handed with a game that obviously has skills and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been rough. But enough about my problems and more about the game. How is the game so far? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. When I first played it about a year ago, I guess, it was rough. I mean, I was excited, but it was definitely rough. And I didn't really know how to think about it. I didn't know if it was actually going to be any good or if it was going to be kind of a disappointment. At this point in time, however, I feel way more positive about the game overall. Like, it looks better, it's way more optimized, and honestly, I'm kind of impressed by the turnaround they've had thus far. Seriously, this is a lot more fun than it was a year ago, which I guess makes sense. A whole year's worth of development. They're not exactly going to be sitting on their asses doing nothing. They're going to try to make a game that's actually worth playing. Most of the time, anyway. So again, if you've ever heard of Neocore, you've probably played one of their Van Helsing games, which means that this is going to be a lot more familiar to you. You're probably going to recognize this as more like, obviously more like the Van Helsing games than Diablo 3. You can even tell by the pacing of the combat as opposed to, you know, Diablo, where it's kind of like real close quarters melee. Now, there are characters in the game you can play which are more focused on melee and such as, well, I guess a Crusader with a chainsword and so on. But I'm kind of more of a ranged fan myself, you know, sitting back and shooting shit with various weapons. Right now I have a shotgun, which is barely doing the job right now, but this is kind of a higher difficulty level that I'm doing. You have a power level, as you can see up here, which is based on your equipment. If you played Vermintide, you probably have a rough idea of what I'm talking about, or Vermintide 2 anyway. And down here you can actually see the power level of the level, and I'm pretty much not supposed to be here, or at least I can be. You get more reward. It's just going to be a little bit more challenging, with the enemies dealing 12% more damage, and me, myself, only dealing 7% less damage than I would fighting something closer to my level. So yeah, good stuff. Now, this game does have co-op. Keep that in mind. I'm actually just playing alone because, you know, I'm a loner. I'm a hermit. I don't need friends. Who needs friends nowadays? Not me. So here I am, you know, one-handed doing this shit, boy. Let's go. You do have, like I said, 3 different classes in the game. Each class has an additional 3 subclasses within it, so giving you a grand total of about 9 different playstyles for the game. Now, a lot of those playstyles are kind of interchangeable within that particular class. So, for example, picking the Crusader, which is pretty much what I'm playing right now, there are 3 subclasses aside from that. Basically, one being more of a hand-to-hand fighter, one being more of a shooter type, and one being, shoot, I don't remember. So I'm doing a great job at this. You can tell, pro strats. But anyway, so yeah, each level that you go into is going to have different objectives that you're supposed to do, different ways of going about the mission. For example, this one, I actually have to destroy 3 warp gates. Well, I guess more like 9 warp gates, and I've only destroyed 2 so far. And as you can see, I'm having to do a lot of kiting, retreating back, and letting my turrets actually support me to be able to fight off these hordes of chaos soldiers. So, and again, remember, this is a preview build. Thus far, it's not done. You might see some graphical glitches and stuff like right there with, you know, in the game. And the current build anyway, which I'm sure will be fixed. I mean, I gotta tell you, like, this game looked like Play-Doh when I first played it a year and some change ago. It looked okay, it just didn't look that good. Now it looks a whole lot better, and I'm not even playing it on max graphics. I'm playing it on some variant of medium high. So, I mean, I gotta say, it looks a lot better. Now, I do have a couple of complaints about the game, and it's mostly because I'm a huge Warhammer fan, and it's kind of more lore-oriented than it is anything regarding the gameplay. Gameplay-wise, this is a really fun game, and if it wasn't Warhammer 40K, I'd probably be singing praises towards it. But I gotta be honest, this Crusader being able to 1v1 Space Marines is painful. It's painful. It hurts me. Because this is bullshit. Like, look at this. This is a Chaos Word Bearer's champion. This guy is probably thousands of years old, whereas my Inquisitor is probably just a couple hundred years old, and he is beating the dog shit out of these Space Marines like they're nothing. Now, I'm just a Warhammer fangirl, so this is ridiculous to me. Like, being able to just fight through these waves of enemies who barely can even put up a fight against my, you know, the might of the Emperor on my side and all that nonsense. So yeah, that's actually kind of my biggest complaint with this game, is the hordes you're fighting are just absolutely ridiculous. But that's meant to be the flavor of this game. That's supposed to be like that. That's, you know, you don't go into a Diablo game expecting to go 1v1 against a monster, and then here we go. No, it's more like you're going to fight against 500 hordes before you get to a boss. And this game is just like that. It's that same core concept. Is you're going to be fighting hordes of enemies, as literally hordes of enemies show up. Oh, I'm stuck on this beacon. Get off of it. Run. Run. This is so hard to play with one hand. But yeah, so it's just like Diablo. You fight hordes of enemies until eventually you get to a real toughie, and you fight the tough guy. You kill him, and then you move on with your life and get loot. There's a lot of loot. There's a lot of customization going on here. I think, honestly, it's almost overwhelming. Diablo's simplified the skill trees and whatnot, whereas this game's chosen to make it a little bit more complicated. There's a lot of passive bonuses going on, rather than active skills. Guns, weapons anyway, map the skills that you can use. Now, there are skills that can be changed, such as my 4 ability, which is calling down that turret, and it's actually based on my armor. So, you can choose which types of special abilities you have based on your armament, what you're wearing, and what implants your person has, more so than skills that you get in a traditional action RPG, such as, again, Diablo, where the skills are not they're not dictated based on what weapons you're carrying, rather the class you're playing as. Now, the class you're playing as in this one kind of more has to do with what weapons and play style you can kind of use, but not the skills that you're going to be limited to. Unless you're playing the Psyker. The Psyker, I guess, has psychic abilities, but I haven't played him yet, so I wouldn't be able to tell you that for sure, how that actually works. I assume it's still probably going to be related to weapons. Again, kind of like Vermintide, where Vermintide dictates what weapons you're actually using and so on and so forth. Now, you're probably also wondering, are there a lot of different enemy types? Are there a lot of different mission types? So on and so forth. Yes, there are. There's a metric ton of them, honestly. Just the enemy types alone, they all kind of boil down to similar, either melee or they shoot you from a distance, or they have a combination of both, or they have psychic powers. You'll see rogue psychers and chaos sorcerers and whatnot throughout the game. You'll also fight big boss minions like hell brutes, dreadnoughts, and something I've never even seen before called a decimator, a chaos decimator. Now, obviously, being an Inquisitor, your primary enemy of choice is going to be various forms of chaos warriors. But, I mean, that's kind of expected. You're an Inquisitor. That's your whole purpose, is to fight the forces of chaos and defend the Imperium of Men from them. So, you know, that totally makes sense. Now, going back onto the whole the lore thing, another complaint I have regarding lore is the fact that these chaos forces seem to work in unison. Which, now, for overall objectives, like when Abaddon the Despoiler, you know, during the 13th Black Crusade and all that, got chaos to work together to fight, you know, the Imperium of Man from the Eye of Terror, yeah, okay, that makes sense. That's a specific instance where that occurs. But Chaos doesn't always just work together. Like, they're not best buds, they're not friends. Just because they're on the same side doesn't mean they don't fight each other all the time. For example, Khorne hates Slaanesh. And as such, his dudes won't really be seen fighting side by side unless it's a Black Crusade. Really, that's the only times. That, or, you know, a threat from the Imperium of Man is greater than, you know, whatever. So they just don't fight side by side. They don't sit here and hang out in space stations together just waiting for some fucking Inquisitor to come up and just be like, hey, yo, dudes, how's it going? I'm gonna kill you now. Like, that's just not really a thing. So it's weird, because you'll see in this game, like, the Word Bearers. The Word Bearers, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty damn sure they're kind of more of a Chaos Undivided, I suppose. And then I'm pretty sure I've seen World Eaters. Maybe I imagine that. But World Eaters are Khorne. They're not Chaos Undivided. They're not going to team up with Nurgle. And, like, here we go. Here's a Word Bearers. So maybe that's what they're saying, though, is like with the Word Bearers, because I think they are Chaos Undivided, so that they work together with Nurgle's minions to fight against the Inquisitors in this particular case. Which, at that point, I guess it makes a little bit more sense. But still, I'm skeptical. I'm really skeptical, because why don't they just use like the Death Guard? Like, why don't they just have the Death Guard working with Nurgle demons? That makes sense, because the Death Guard are specifically dedicated to Nurgle. So it would make sense me coming onto a space station with a bunch of little demon rotlings hanging out, that there's going to be Death Guard there and not Word Bearers, who are kind of more of like, again, Chaos Undivided. So you might see them just kind of fighting without demon support or something like that, more fighting the Imperium on their own with cultists or so on, spreading the belief of chaos rather than to one specific god. Or even the Black Legion working with the Word Bearers. I could kind of see that. I don't know specific lore regarding those two, so I mean, hey, what do I know? But again, it's just kind of, it's little things like that kind of throw me off a bit. And especially, like, how I mentioned before, that this Inquisitor is so freaking overpowered that he can go toe-to-toe with a Space Marine. You think that's a big fucking deal? How about an Inquisitor who can literally go toe-to-toe with a Dreadnought? Or a Hellbrute with a fucking shotgun? Like, what kind of nonsense is that? But again, it's the flavor of the game, I guess. It's what these are meant to be. So don't go into these games expecting it to be like anywhere even remotely close to the lore, because they definitely took a lot of poetic license with it, which ultimately, I guess, was their desire to make a fun game. But it doesn't necessarily have to give up those lore elements. It could take a little bit of freedom with them, but it doesn't mean it still won't be fun, if you catch what I'm kind of hinting at here. Take Space Hulk Deathwing, for example. Now, although a lot of people had a lot of issues with graphical problems and whatnot like that, it's still, I would say, it's still pretty close to the lore in terms of how everything is presented to you. Now, keep in mind, my initial thought process wouldn't be that 4 Space Marines could easily take on that many Tyranids that easily. But, I mean, it makes way more fucking sense that they can use strategy and whatnot to their side than this Inquisitor in what barely looks to even be, like, this doesn't even look like power armor. I look like I'm basically running around in robes and chainmail, and I'm, like, taking bullets straight to the face. I'm taking Hellbrute shots and bolter rounds like they're nothing. Like, can we get every Space Marine chapter equipped with this type of weaponry and armor? Because at that point in time, they would just be godlike. I mean, there's nothing. They got nothing on, like, nobody's got anything on them. It'd be great. But anyway, I'm just being nitpicky because, again, I'm really into the lore. So, that's just my own personal hang-up. If you're actually wondering if the game's fun, yeah, it's pretty fun. I'm having to retreat a lot here because, again, I'm playing a higher difficulty level, and I'm playing with one hand as opposed to 2 hands. Let's actually check out one of my other guns, since I've been using the same gun over and over again, so we can actually see what we have to work with here. This is actually an auto gun instead of a shotgun. The auto gun, in my opinion, is a little bit more effective at taking these guys out. Then again, that shotgun is perfect for these big mass groups. And that's kind of something you're going to play around with. You've got all sorts of different weapons. You've got plasma guns, plasma rifles, plasma pistols. You got bolters, you got heavy bolters, and auto guns, and las guns, and chain swords, and so on and so forth. I mean, there's all sorts of weapons represented here. Even guns that I've never even seen. For example, I don't think I've seen too many games that actually feature an auto gun in it. Not at least one you can use. More often than not, you see bolters. You might occasionally see a shotgun, very rarely. Like, I think Dawn of War 2 and... yeah, Dawn of War 2 had shotguns. I don't think Dawn of War 1 had shotguns. You've also got flamers that you can use as well, which are pretty effective at taking out these swarms of chaos, like demons, the little rotlings and the little small chaos spawn running around. And so on and so forth. So the weapons are definitely well represented, and they all pack a hell of a punch. That's something else I love about this game, is just look at how these people fall apart to all this weaponry we got. They don't stand a fucking chance in terms of once they start getting hit. I mean, they're dying left and right. And the damage model in the system is really cool as well. You can actually see bullets actually ripping apart boxes and stuff as we're playing. And that's something I absolutely adore. That's probably the best thing about these games, is the really insane amount of damage, the physics model and how it works. And even the cover is pretty cool. It's not that great. It's kind of clunky at times, but it's cool that they have it in there and it can be actually used. And honestly, I'd be doing a lot more effective if I could actually get behind boxes and stuff and not be taking bullets straight to the face. So, yeah. But anyway, I could probably go on for a little longer, but I'll kind of leave it here. You know, this is, again, Warhammer 40,000 Inquisitor Martyr. It's a pretty cool game. I highly recommend it overall. You know, despite the fact that I've spent half the video bitching about lore, it's a cool game, and it's fun. If you like action RPGs, if you like Warhammer, you're probably going to enjoy this. If you were a fan of Diablo, Path of Exile, the Van Helsing games, or Torchlight, anything like that, you're going to find something here you're going to enjoy. It's definitely got a lot more depth to it than, say, Diablo, in terms of the character customization with how you actually spec out your characters. There's a lot of passive bonuses. There's at least like 20 different skill trees you can go down. It's fucking ridiculous just how much you can actually do with your character. So if that's kind of your thing, if you really enjoy the customization systems of like Path of Exile, you're probably going to find yourself right at home with this game. And again, I'm only looking at the early access build, the alpha build. I know the developer themselves put out a letter back in March pretty much saying that the build they're doing privately is way more, there's way more to it. It's way more polished than this build you see here, which is pretty crazy because this is way more, it's just a lot better than what I played a year ago. So I can't imagine what they've got, you know, cooked up in store for us on release day for June 5th. But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother day. This has been Commissar Bro. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. If you have any suggestions for other games you'd like to see played, or if you'd even like to see future content from this game, I would love to play that for you again. Warhammer games are definitely my cup of tea. But anyway, this has been CB, and I'll see you next time.